All right, so welcome to the corridor. My name is Angel Leon, your host, and my guest today, she helped invent basically an entire new category, and now she's building a firm to fund basically the next one. Leah Solivan left an 8-year run as a software engineer at IBM around 2008, right? Basically, when the economy was collapsing and then founded what we know today as TaskRabbit. She pioneered basically this gig economy before we had worked for it. Was CEO for 8 years, scaled it to 44 cities here in the United States, raised more than 50, $60 million. And in 2017, she finally sold it to IKEA. Now she's basically, like I mentioned, an investor with Precedent VC, her own early stage firm backing the founders, right, who are first in and precedent setting. I hope I didn't steal that anyway. She's
Perfect.
a
Perfect.
proud Latina, roots in Puerto Rico, and she always puts that front and center. So, and that's one of the main things I love about her. So, Leah, welcome to the corridor.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
All right. So you had 8 years at IBM. Originally a stable engineering career, and then you walked away at that 2008 crash to build something that no one had seen before. What did you see that everyone else was missing,
hmm
specifically with that category that you went
hmm
after? And honestly, were you scared about this new venture?
yeah, I mean, honestly, I left my job in at IBM June of 2008, and the stock market and everything really started crashing in September. And I had already left IBM. So I wish I could see I had the foresight to see the opportunity, but it actually played out a little bit differently. I had the idea for TaskRabbit, and I knew that there were new technologies emerging, specifically social location and mobile technology was, in 2008, very new. The iPhone had just come out a few months earlier. So I became really passionate as an engineer about building on these technologies to connect real people in the real world to get real things done. That was kind of the premise. So I
Hmm.
left IBM. Then everything crashes. Then we enter the Great Recession. And then I'm scared. Yes. Then I am scared. I'm realizing, like, wow, I just left this high
Hmm.
paying, very stable job. I cashed out a $27,000 pension from IBM that I had. And that's what I used to fund the first, version of the company. But I also saw at that time that incredible people were losing their jobs. They were being laid off, they were losing work. And so it was at that moment, sort of that September timeframe, where I said, wow, what I'm building, maybe this could help. What I'm building could help. This is a new way
Hmm.
of working. It's a way to make money. And I had people that were former lawyers, teachers, these like nice jobs that had just been laid off that were looking for new, flexible ways of finding work. And so that was kind of the moment that I realized, yes, I'm a little scared because I also left my job, but I also think I can create something for this, new economy, which became, the gig economy, um, that could really make a big impact.
And all that sounds great. And but in 2008, the idea, right, of letting a stranger in your home to or run an errand for you, right, all those things were like unthinkable. Uh, so
Unthinkable. Yes.
so you had to build some sort of trust in the marketplace before anyone believed in that and in using that kind of thing. How did you actually do that?
Yeah. I mean, if you think back to 2008, and if I told you, why don't you just go grab a ride in a stranger's car? Jump into a stranger's car and drive somewhere. People would think you're insane. There's no way. There's no way we would ever do that. Same thing for TaskRabbit. It just invite a stranger into your home to, like organize your bookshelf. Like it's not going to happen in 2008. And so there was a huge trust that needed to be built. And the way I saw it was through technology. I saw the opportunity to utilize the Facebook platform and social networking at the time to build trust between people. So if I saw that you hired, Bob to come to your home and install bookshelves, and you gave him a great rating and review, and you and I are friends, then I would feel comfortable also hiring Bob, right? And so
Mhm.
that was the early idea and premise of the whole thing, is how do you build trust between strangers utilizing the new technologies that were available. So it was an experiment in the beginning, but
Yeah.
it certainly took off, because now you'll just jump into
Yeah.
a stranger's car, with a Lyft or Uber.
Yeah, now you put a lot of things right in hands of strangers nowadays, and you built TaskRabbit for nearly a decade, right? And then you handed it off, and it was acquired, and of course, everyone, included yourself, I'm sure celebrated the exit, but rarely people, I think, talk about the personal side of things and the letting go. So, what did it actually feel for you to let go of TaskRabbit after, again, nearly a decade, right, with
Yeah.
it, and then such a passion project for you?
Yeah, it was really, really hard. I remember, when we sold the company, I remember this vivid phone call. It was a board call where we were voting on to sell the company. It was obvious the vote was going to be yes. There was no question. I thought the phone call would take, 2 minutes of time. And we get on, and this is before Zoom, right? Before COVID, and 2017. And so the first investor, our Series A investor, gets on, and I expect him to be like, yep, 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 go around and hang up. And he launches into this beautiful, speech about how proud he is about what we've built as a company and as a team. And he's so
Yeah.
proud to have been a part of it. Series B investor does the same thing. By the time we get to me at the end, I'm in tears. And I'm realizing that this is closing a major chapter, not just for me, for the team, for these investors that have been on this journey with me. And that actually, when I hung up the phone and it was officially voted yes to sell the company, I cried. And not because I was upset or sad, but it
Mhm.
was like this weight had been lifted that I'd been carrying for a decade. It was like I was in survival mode for a decade, and then all of a sudden, like, okay, I survived. It's over.
Yeah.
And so, it took a little while, but it did give me the freedom to go and jump onto the investing side of the table, which I've absolutely loved. And I realize now that I am really built as an investor to, back this next generation of entrepreneurs. That's what I love doing. And instead of TaskRabbit being my identity as a founder, I feel like it gives me credibility now as an investor. And so I love investing in these early stage companies and partnering with these founders, and then offering any sort of shared experiences I can from when I was at TaskRabbit.
Very cool, Leah. And you recently founded Precedent Collective, of course, Precedent VC, to basically support investors from underrepresented backgrounds. Most people, focus on getting more diverse founders funded. You went one level up, right, to who's writing the checks. Why is the investor side the real leverage point for you, right? What's the link between who's in the room deciding and who actually gets funded?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the leverage point is who controls the capital. And, a lot of GPs with venture capital funds and firms, they're controlling, which founders get funded. It's with the lens and experiences that they bring that they're making decisions about which companies get formed. If you go even a level up, you realize that, you and I are fundraising from limited partners. And the same rules apply there as well. Limited partners are deciding which venture capital firms will have funding to deploy and have capital to deploy. And so it really is, this system that revolves around who has the power, who has the capital, who has the check writing capabilities. And so the more people we can put into check writing roles as, investors, as limited partners, that's where you start to see a change in who builds companies and who actually gets funded as well, because we all bring a different lens and a different experience, and we assess people, companies, funds differently in different networks. So that's where I see, the big leverage point in this system.
And why the thesis, right? The specifically that you picked for Precedent VC.
So
Any connections of of that thesis specifically with your background?
yeah. So Precedent VC is focused on early stage founders and really backing this next generation of companies that are focused on building for the consumer, that are category defining, that are precedent setting for the next generation. I specifically am focusing on consumer businesses because I've operated a consumer business with TaskRabbit, and consumer has been really out of favor actually in the venture capital industry for some time. But we're at a massive inflection point right now with new technology, with AI. It's changing consumer behavior faster than ever. And this is the moment when the next, group of iconic companies will be founded. And so I really wanted to be in the market backing those founders and those companies at this moment in time. And so that's why I focused here.
Very cool. And you're a proud Latina, right, with roots in Puerto Rico, and you always, like I said at the beginning, you put that front and center. How has that shown up in how you see founders, and in the bets, right, you're willing to make that others might not?
Well, the Spanish speaking community here in the United States is the largest population in the entire country, right? You and I know this. It's over 20% of the
Mhm.
population here. When you think about the decision making power, the power to purchasing power as consumers to buy, like this is a population and community that is a massive lever in this country. So companies and founders that are building in this community, in this market, with this lens, they're going to make a lot of money and they're going to build massive businesses. And so, yeah, I mean, I think, as an example, one of the companies I've invested in is a company called Me Salud Health. And Me Salud is actually a B2B model where they go into employers and they offer to employers a telehealth service that are for native Spanish speakers. And
Mm,
so all
very
of
cool.
their employees that are native Spanish speakers can utilize this service for telehealth medicine, but the employer is the one paying for it. Obviously, the employer wants to keep their employees healthy and happy, right? And it makes a lot of sense. It's an incredible business. And I think that's a great example of the lens, I can bring as an investor. Like that company should be funded, should be built. Bismarck Lepe is the founder of that Mexican entrepreneur. He's a serial entrepreneur, has built and exited other businesses as well. So I think it's really important, just as I've said, to have a different lens, to bring your own experiences when you're looking at companies and looking at markets to invest in.
Amazing. And talk to us a little bit about your podcast as well. I've seen it around in on LinkedIn, and I checked it out on Spotify.
Yes.
So yeah, talk to us a little bit about that. Why you started that?
This actually all started with the podcast. The podcast came first. It's called Breaking Precedent. And I interview leaders across industries that are shifting society in some way. And it is a lot of business and tech people. I've had Bismarck from Me Salud. I've had Samara from Chingona Ventures as well. But it's also artists and activists and politicians. And so, I just love the idea of innovation and moving industries forward. And I, see people that are breaking precedents, that are setting new precedents. And I want to hear their stories and I want to elevate their stories as well. And so it started with a podcast. The podcast has now turned into a book that's coming out next summer called Breaking Precedent. So that'll be out next year. And then, on the back of the podcasts and the book is actually when I started the fund as well,
Okay.
Precedent VC, to kind of continue that thread of work.
That's beautiful. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. So, last question that I always ask is sort of, a Latino founder. It's out there building right now, in especially in a harder market, right? That, as you mentioned, maybe from a background or a place where investors usually overlook. What is the one thing you tell them? What's your advice?
My advice is, and I had to do this myself as well, is like just get connected, get into a network, meet people. There are great opportunities with places like Endeavor, with the NAA. Find
Mhm.
your communities, find your network, meet new people. For every person you meet, ask for one other introduction. Just like, great to meet you. Is there anyone else in your network you think would be interesting for me to meet? And that's how you really start getting plugged in and start building your own network as well. So that would be my advice.
Thank you, Leah. Appreciate it. Thank you for that advice, and thank you for taking the time to speak with us today, sharing a little bit about your story and in general. That is exactly the goal of this podcast for me, is to share the stories of Latinos that are building, and to share basically that si se puede, right? That we're all in this, and there's people that have gotten to places where we want to be, etc. It's all a matter of, like you said, networking, connecting with people, getting with people around you that has similar interests, people that can provide value to your connections, your networking, things like that, and can potentially get you to the next level. And of course, that's something that you have done throughout your entire career. And as a fellow Puerto Rican as well, I really appreciate and really proud of just sharing this story with my audience.
Oh, I'm so proud to be here with you, Angel. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Leah. Thank you, and everyone listening out there. Thank you for listening. This was The Corridor. I'm Angel Leon, your host, and Leah Solivan was my guest for today. Thank you.